for all seasons. I'm Todd Powell. I'm with Deborah Ross-Basin of Destination Quebec, and we're going to talk to you about traveling Eastern Canada and Quebec and why it's a great destination to go, whether you're going winter, spring, summer, or fall. Vacations by Rail is the U.S. leader in rail vacations around the world, and we're celebrating 10 years in business. We're the preferred rail vacation provider for AARP, so AARP members do receive special benefits when booking with Vacations by Rail. And we help customers choose between a wide variety of rail vacation options throughout the United States, Canada, Europe, and the rest of the world. So again, thanks for joining us. What I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to send a chat message out to the entire audience here to make sure that everybody can hear us. So if you can't hear us, maybe you can respond to that chat and we can see if we can figure it out. So and then we're going to ask some polling questions throughout the webinar as well, so we can get a little information so we can tailor the webinar as we go through to answer the questions and respond to the audience. So why don't we start out with a quick polling question now. How many of you are ever taking a rail vacation? So we have about 67% have not taken a rail vacation and 33% have. So I'm just going to close that up, close that poll. Hopefully you can all see our screen again here. And well, good. So those who have taken rail vacations, some of this you may understand, and this will be all new for you. Traveling to Eastern Canada is really an amazing experience, and there are popular trains and easy ways to get around Eastern Canada and around Quebec. We'll talk about the top destinations and attractions in activities in the province. We'll talk about and then we're going to dig deeper in the province, since Deborah will talk a bunch about Quebec, and we'll walk through some of the things you must see and do, speak about the destination, and then we'll talk about some of the top train vacations featuring Quebec, and then we'll answer some questions at the end of the webinar. So planning a rail vacation in Quebec, and a lot of what we're going to talk about here kind of goes for planning any rail vacation, really. Things you want to do is you want to think about where you want to go, so what cities do you want to visit, the number of nights you want to spend in each destination, and really importantly in a rail vacation, do you want to have an overnight train travel experience, or do you want to take shorter day trips, and what type of hotel accommodations? Do you want to go in moderate, superior, deluxe accommodations, and then how long do you want to spend on your vacation? So those are some of the questions whenever you're going to take a rail vacation you're going to want to ask yourself. And when you're focusing on the rail experience, really spend some time thinking about if you want to have that experience sleeping on the train, or if you just want to have some daylight experiences, because those they're really quite different experiences, both unique in their own way. So when we're talking about Quebec, popular trains in Quebec, we're talking about Via Rail service, generally speaking. So Via Rail is the national rail line of Canada. So if any of you are from the United States, we have Amtrak as the national rail line in the United States. Via Rail is the national rail line of Canada. It operates over 497 trains per week in 8 provinces, and it covers over 12,500 kilometers, or 7,800 miles of track, almost all of which is owned and operated by the CN Railway. So that's important to know as well, because these trains are shared. A lot of the train services in Canada are shared with the freight lines. So and Via Rail carries approximately 4.1 million passengers annually, and the majority are along the routes that we're going to talk about today, which is which is their corridor service, which actually runs from Windsor all the way up to to Quebec City. So that's where a lot of their traffic happens. Another train that we're going to talk about, that I want to talk about briefly here, is Amtrak's Adirondack service between New York City and Albany and Montreal. And the reason I want to touch on that, it's an easy way to get up from the east coast of the United States up to Montreal. It's about an 11-hour train ride. But interestingly enough about that train is that you can, it is considered one of the more scenic rail journeys in the United States, particularly at the fall time. And it's 11 hours or so all during the day. And of these trains here that we're looking at on this particular slide, the popular trains of Quebec, Via Rail's corridor service between Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City is daylight service. Amtrak's Adirondack is daylight service, but the ocean service, which you can take from Quebec City to Halifax, is an overnight train experience that you can have when on the east coast of when you're in eastern Canada. So here's some of the view of some of the trains that you might experience while traveling in Canada. You can see some of the trains, like this one here, has a dome car. Onboard services available on Amtrak Via Rail's corridor service includes a couple of different classes of service. So you have an economy class, you have a business class, and you have sleeper classes on the overnight train Via Rail's ocean service. So the economy class includes a seat besides a large window. Light meals, snacks, and beverages are available for purchase when in economy class. And at Vacations by Rail, we include the economy class in our moderate packages. The business class includes a seat beside a big picture window, similar to what you can see. There's a window here. And the meals are included when you're complimentary meals, including wine, newspaper, priority boarding. You also have access to the in-station's panorama lounges when available. And we usually include the business class service with Vacations by Rail packages in the Superior and Deluxe packages. And it is a nice way to upgrade. Even if you're in the moderate packages, you can always upgrade to business class because all of our packages are customizable. And then in Via Rail's ocean service, there is Via Rail's ocean service has sleeping accommodations on the train, includes a private cabin, meals included aboard the train along the route, and exclusive access to the various lounge cars. So if you decide you want to do that overnight journey, make sure when you talk to our vacation specialists here, they can talk to you about the different sleeper options that you have on Via Rail's ocean service. And at different times of the year, some of these sleeping classes, Via Rail may not have all those available throughout the entire year, generally during the off season. But summertime, Sleeper Plus class is available, and our reservation agents can assist you. And one other thing to note when you're starting to take looking at overnight trains, is that it's even more important to look at when do you want to travel and booking in advance, because sleeping accommodations on trains, they do sell out quickly because there's much more limited availability than there are in just the economy seats. Here's an example again of onboard Via Rail's ocean service. So obviously traveling by train, a very relaxing experience. It's a great time to spend time with family and friends, just spend time looking out the window, reading, relaxing. And my favorite experience, no matter which train you're taking, is to venture down to one of the dining cars, have a snack, have a meal, because there's just something really quite unique and wonderful about having a meal while on the train. It's like a moving picture out your window throughout your journey and throughout your meal. Here's a picture of Amtrak's Adirondack service going through the Hudson River Valley. So if you can look at this picture here, you can imagine how it would be during the fall time. The fall colors are just popping, and it is quite an amazing journey that people should consider if they're on the East Coast and they want to get up to Montreal and then start to explore Quebec. Taking the Adirondack is an easy way to do it. And Again, you can connect to this train as well through other trains through the Amtrak network to make a complete rail experience. See if we have any interesting polling questions. Another polling question as we move into talking about Quebec. Have any of you ever been up to Quebec at all? So I'll leave this open. So we have 25% yes and 75% no. So for some of you, well, we're going to be covering topics. I'm sure that if you've been to Quebec, you'll still have some interesting. You'll get some interesting information from our webinar today. And for those of you who have not been to Quebec, you're in for a treat as we talk about the different activities and destinations in Quebec. So the top 5 Quebec destinations, really, when you start to look at it, is Montreal. It's a great place to start your holiday when traveling up in Eastern Canada. Traveling up to Quebec City, to Charlevoix, Gaspé, and then the Ottawa region, which really kind of overlaps with Quebec. And Deborah will talk a little bit more about that when we get into her area of expertise, which is really digging into the destinations themselves. So here's a map, and I think this might be a good time to pass it over to Deborah. Deborah, I'm going to pass over the screen to you, and hopefully we can get you on here.
Sounds
One
good.
moment. All right. Let's see. We want to share screen. Bear with me for one moment. I'm going to. Okay, Deborah. Thanks for jumping on the webinar with us today and telling our audience here about Quebec. Deborah is an expert in Quebec. She is with Destination Quebec, and they represent the entire region. Deborah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Thanks for having me on here. It's a great opportunity to talk to all of you. Those that haven't been, perhaps we can convert you, and hopefully you've been sending your clients up to Quebec. It's a great destination. The map we have here, you'll see Quebec in the white, and you'll see just below that circle with Montreal in it, the green. That's actually the United States. Quebec borders the states of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. You'll see Maine headed up to New Brunswick, and then New Brunswick, we go out to the Atlantic Ocean and up to the Arctic Circle and to Ontario on the west side. So you'll see Montreal and Quebec are the 2 cities that are circled. Those are the ones I'll be talking about most today. The blue that runs through the 2 of those is the St. Lawrence Seaway. And you'll see that little finger of white just above New Brunswick. That's the Gaspé Peninsula. That's a destination that has a number. We have 14 lighthouses that are still working there. There are about 24 in total. Some of them are extant. Some of those lighthouses you can actually stay in. Many of them you can visit. They have small museums. Some you can climb to the top. It's all a very exciting area out there. We also then have the area that's by Ottawa, and you'll see the star. That's the national capital of Canada. We claim that only because if you do a city tour of Ottawa and you're visiting the Art Museum or the Mint or the Parliament Hill that they have in Ottawa, you generally also visit the Museum of Civilization, and that's actually on our side of the river in a city called Gatineau. We have a lovely shopping mall in that area as well. There is park areas, national park areas, and great things to see and do in that area as well. And the casino, if you're looking for some nighttime activity, is on our side of the river. So we're going to claim that Ottawa region, the capital region, as well. Let's see if I can do this. It's not moving on me. Todd, do I have control? Yes, I do. Okay. I think.
Yeah, I popped it over for you, so I think you should.
All right, there we go.
Yep.
When we're selling Quebec, there are a couple of themes that we sort of sell into. One of them is the history that's there, and it's a living history. These are some of the reenactments that we have. Sometimes we call them animators. Different festivals, different attractions. We have a number of military sites that have animators that are dressed in period costumes and show you what it would be like to be in the Army at that time. We have animators that do traditional crafts. They make some of the candles and food and soap and things like that. So all of that is very much alive when you're in these cities.
Here, I'll pop it for you and see if...
I think we're going to have to do that. It's not seeming to work.
Yep, okay, no problem. Just let me know and I will switch for you.
Okay. And then we have our festivals. And the festivals are the Jazz Festival here in Montreal. We have a circus festival every summer in Montreal. We have the Quebec Summer Festival, which is different types of eclectic music, everything from hip-hop and African drums to some of the pop musicians and country musicians that tour the world. We also have a sacred music festival in Quebec City, and we have our comedy festival in Montreal. And these are draw for people from around the world, and hundreds of thousands of people. Most of these festivals run anywhere from 4 to 10 days, and it's a great opportunity for you to get out there and just mix with the people, and you'll get a wristband that'll get you into all of the different outdoor stages. There's scheduled performances at each of these festivals, as well as a number of food festivals and smaller classic music festivals and chamber music festivals, just all sorts of activity, especially in the summer, all summer long. So to have the next slide.
All right.
And we sell the food, not only the fine dining, and we have some great fine dining. We got 2 of them here. We'll just keep going. But the food is the farm visits. It's going to the marketplace. It's going to the chef-owned restaurants, some of the chefs that are on the Food Network here in the United States, and definitely the ones that are on the Canadian Food Network. And you'll see write-ups in newspapers and magazines, and they have their own following. But what I like about Quebec, most importantly, is that not only do you have these great, well-known restaurants, I don't know technically what the percentage of classically trained chefs are to the entire population, but you can go to the middle of nowhere at a 4-way stop and have incredible cuisine with the local ingredients. And so all of that is a great experience as well when you're there. And then we have our outdoor areas. This next slide here. This is the Bay St. Paul in the Charlevoix region. And this is considered the most beautiful bay in Quebec. And of course, Quebec is the Belle Province. It's the beautiful province. So it's the most beautiful bay in the most beautiful province. And we have all sorts of outdoor vistas with the water, the seaway. We have the mountains. We have rivers and lakes and just all sorts of beautiful areas to go. And the next slide. Cut.
Oh, yep.
There we go. Okay. The 4 seasons that we have. I mean, this is the beautiful colors we have with our maple leaves and the maple and birch that you'll see in the mountains. The great experiences that you have throughout the province with winter, with summer, the spring flowers coming up. All of it is a great time to go. So again, I mean, it's a 4-season destination. There's activities that are specific to each season, but it's also a lot of things continue year-round. Our museums, most of our museums are open year-round, particularly in Montreal and Quebec City. So there's always something to do. You don't have to worry about being off-season. Those shoulder seasons are a great time to come. And then, of course, summer is our peak period with everybody being out of school and available to travel and the great weather that we have. The next slide that we have. Is Quebec City, and this is where we're going to start. The province is named Quebec, and people ask me all the time what that means in French, and it means nothing in French. When the first settlers came and Jacques Cartier came and landed in the area, this is the first place where you could shoot a cannon across the river. If you looked at the map earlier, the St. Lawrence Seaway gets pretty wide when you get out towards the Gaspé. So this was the first place where you could actually shoot a cannon and have a defensive position in North America. And it was built as a fort. You'll see the cannons here as part of the 4th, 2nd Regiment that is still garrisoned in Quebec City. But Quebec means where the river narrows. And so that's the name that we have here. And you can see that we have the hill, and the building that's standing up on top of the hill is the Chateau Frontenac, a wonderful hotel that you can stay in if you were interested in doing that. Also is a great place if you're not staying there, if you're staying at the Manoir Victoria or one of the other nearby hotels. They have fantastic restaurants that you can go to, coffee shops, things like that. And you'll see that this area here that you're looking at is on top of the hill. It's called Within the Walls. And if you go to the next slide, Todd. Here's another shot of it, and you'll see the walkway. This walkway goes all the way around the hotel facing the St. Lawrence River. It's sort of a public space, a public promenade, and in the summer you'll see the buskers like the guy on stilts here, and different types of performers, everything from trick bike riders to magicians to cowboys with ropes. Just about everything that's possible to do as a busker, you can find that at the public places, the parks, the squares that we have in Quebec City. And again, that's one of the great things about coming in the summer. It's a little more crowded, but there's a lot of activity that's going on day and night, really, in Quebec City. So we have the next slide. This is the area just outside the walls. And again, this would be on what's called the upper part of the city. This is Grand Allée, but you'll see the people outside dining al fresco at the tables. And again, we're a destination that has a pretty harsh winter and a lot of snow. So once it starts warming up, even if we had the warm days, let's say, like we've had recently in parts of the United States here, those tables will be out and people will be sitting out there and enjoying it. And into the fall, you'll find people as late as October into November, if it's a nice day, sitting out and enjoying a cocktail or the meal outside. And there are all types of restaurants. It's not just the French cuisine. We have wonderful Italian restaurants and the Irish pubs and Chinese restaurants and Vietnamese restaurants and just all sorts of local produce as well and local specialties in each of these restaurants. The next slide. And one thing about Quebec City is that it is really a city in all of Quebec. The city was established as a French Catholic province and an outpost of the French Catholicism. The bishops of the churches were some of the first buildings that were built. The bishops ruled the territory for quite a bit in the early part of the development of Quebec, which is actually over 400 years old. In 2008, we celebrated our 400th anniversary. So some of our buildings, and many of our buildings, date back to 300 years ago, 350 years ago. One of our parishes in this past year, in 2014, celebrated 350 years as a parish. It was the Basilica of Notre Dame. And because of that, the Pope allowed them to install the only holy door that was ever installed in a church outside of Europe. There's only 7 in the world. This is one of the 7. And it was the only one open last year because it was a special celebration for the 350th anniversary of the parish. Well, we just found out, like March 13th, that the Pope has made an announcement that we're going to have a year of mercy. And so all 7 of these holy doors will be opened again beginning December of this year, going through November of 2016. So this is a perfect time for you to knock on the doors of some of your Catholic churches and get some pilgrimage groups to come up and visit the churches that we had here. It was a huge boost to our tourism numbers. A lot of groups came from even as far as Kansas. They bussed up and came up to visit the pilgrimage site that we have there. And besides for the Basilica of Notre Dame, we do have pilgrimage sites in Montreal at the Oratory St. Joseph that we have there. We have Notre Dame du Cap in Trois-Rivières. We have our Hermitage St. Antoine in Lac Saint Jean. And then we have the Basilica of St. Anne in the Beaupré area. So there is enough to do for a group to spend a week or so in Quebec, just focusing on the art and architecture and pilgrimage sites of Quebec. Next, please. And this is part of our military history. Throughout Canada, and you'll find these in parts of Europe as well, we have these Martella towers that were used as outlooks and outposts and garrisons for the soldiers. This is at the Plains of Abraham, which is a big park area that we have in Quebec City that you can visit. And it's one of the military sites there. There's also a number of monuments. There's a nice discovery center, as well as, again, views of the St. Lawrence, views of the Old City, all of those great things that are in Quebec. The next slide. And then this is St. Anne de Beaupré. This is the pilgrimage site just outside of Quebec. It's the destination for a lot of our day trips. If you're booking an excursion outside of Quebec, you tend to go along the St. Lawrence and you visit some of the villages there, and perhaps the wax museum that we have there, the bees, or the old mill, or this church area here. St. Anne's this is the third church that stood on the site, but again, it's a great pilgrimage site. There's a number of miracles that have been accredited to the church itself and to St. Anne, and wonderful cemetery that's there. There's a little artist's gallery that's just up the road from here, and you can't see just a little bit there of the doors, but he designed the copper doors for the church, and he has since passed away, but his daughters run this gallery and will show your clients, if you've got a group going up there, an individual that wants to come out, they'll demonstrate how to do the copper design and copper carving and use some of the tools, and your clients can see then what goes into something like something as massive as the doors. The next slide. And of course, you always need day and night activities as well. And so if you decide not to have a cocktail at the Chateau Frontenac, you can go to one of the ghost tours. We have a couple of companies that offer ghost tours of the city. And then you'll get to see a different perspective. They are walking tours. And Quebec is a 400-year-old city, with some of our roads being 300 to 400 years old and cobblestone and things like that. So you need to be able to walk in those circumstances, but it is a wonderful way to just get a different view of the city, a little bit of the history, a little bit of entertainment, and a chance to get out and enjoy something in the evening. If you are looking for other types of tours, you can go out to the Ile d'Orleans. We have the breadbasket tours that go out to the farms and orchards and the mills that are out there. And then I think in the next slide, if you show that. This is actually Winter Carnival. That'll be the next one that we need to talk about. Winter Carnival here is a highlight of our Winter Festival. It's always held the first 2 weeks of February, and again, this covers 3 weekends, so it's a longer festival. We have the ice carving, we have frozen canoe races, we have pancake breakfasts and music performances, and just all sorts of activities throughout those 2 weeks. And the next slide. If you're going to come up for the festival, you have to come over to the Ice Hotel as well. This past, we've been now 2 years that we've relocated closer to the city. The Ice Hotel used to be about 40 minutes from the city. Now it's right within the city proper in the old zoo grounds. 34 rooms that you can spend the night at if you're so inclined. Or you can visit for the day and just take part in there's a movie theater. You can watch movies there. There's an ice skating rink. There is the ice bar. And a lot of our corporate events go out there and just have a cocktail at the ice bar. But this is a very unique destination to go to. It's one of only about 4, I think, in the world now. And that is opening, we just got the notice that it closed for 2015. It's actually, closed last week. And it will be open again on January 4th of 2016 for another 3 months. And again, they've had record attendance, so if somebody's interested in staying overnight in particular at the hotel, you should make those bookings early. And next. We will be going on to Montreal, and this is, again, that train service. It's one of the Via Rail photos that will take you into Montreal. And Quebec City and Montreal are situated about 3 hours and 15 minutes to 3.5 hours, depending on how many stops that train makes. So it is very convenient. It's possible to do one or the other as a day trip from the other one, but I think that each are worth their own time, and to spend a couple of days in each is definitely something you would want to do. So we go to the next slide. We will find a view of Montreal eventually.
All right, it's coming up.
There we go. And the St. Lawrence is in the foreground there. You'll see one of our lighthouses just peeking up on the south side of the river there. Montreal is an island. It's very much like New York. Montreal is an island in the middle of two rivers. It's got the big buildings. It's the largest city that we have in the province. It is also the second largest French-speaking city in the world. So you have Paris, and then you have Montreal. This destination, if you look in the middle of the slide, that foreground area is called the Old Port area, and you'll see that a little bit better later on. That area there is from, most of the buildings date to about the 18th century, early 19th century. A lot of cast iron and things like that, but it's not a UNESCO site, so we are able to do a lot of building that we can't do in Quebec, where everything is protected from the UNESCO protection, so everything remains that characteristic 300-year-old city. This one is more of a mix of different types of architecture and different types of styles. So the next slide. You'll see the Old Port of Montreal when it comes up here. This is, again, the outdoor dining that you'll find in Quebec City is just as popular here. The terraces are open, the restaurants are there. This would be in that Old Port area. Again, a number of art galleries and restaurants have opened up in this area just in the past, really, 15 years or so. In the 70s, these were all warehouses, and they were receiving the goods that were coming in by ship from around the world. And then after a while, it fell a little bit into derelict times and wasn't a place that anybody would want to go to after dark. And now it's the happening place to be. We not only have a very active 5 to 7 cocktail hour, but all of these restaurants are open for dinner as well, and a great place to go down for dinner to do an evening or twilight tour. The next slide. Should be coming up again shortly, is that waterfront area. You'll see the Bateau Mouche. These are the dinner cruises. You can do daytime cruises as well, but the dinner cruises are a great opportunity to get out and see the city from a little bit of afar. Wonderful entertainment on board. Some have live music. Some have DJs. If you've got groups, some of them rent themselves out for student tours as well, and it's the no alcohol student tours and a chance for different groups to mix and mingle there. What you'll also see is the dome in the middle, and that is the old city hall. That is Bon Secours Market, and that is a number of our Quebec artisans, the textile workers, clothing designers, jewelry designers, pottery, glassworks, a lot of different unique crafts and things that you won't find anyplace else can be found at Bon Secours Market, and so that's a great place to go and spend some time as well. A number of these galleries also are open in the area. There's churches, there's small museums. The Pointe-à-Pitre Museum is the architecture museum, and when they started to build that, again, we can build in this area because it's not protected by UNESCO. But you do have to still call in the archaeologists every time you hit something. So they started digging the foundations for the architecture museum and found the original footings for most of the buildings for Ville Marie going back again to the 1600s. And so now you can go to the architecture museum, but they also combine that Pointe-à-Pitre with 5 other buildings in the area, and you can walk those original buildings. You can see the brickwork. You can see the footings for these buildings as you walk underneath between these 5 buildings that Pointe Calle is now running. So that's a great experience as well. And again, if you have those students, if you want something to do at night, you can do a ghost tour down there, and that's a different way of looking at things as well. The next slide.
All right, should be coming up.
This is the Basilica Notre Dame. Again, this is one of the churches that we have in Montreal, just as Quebec City had a number of them. Montreal is known for the pilgrimage site at St. Joseph's Oratory on the top of the hill. This is the Basilica Notre Dame in the Old Port. What I like about this one is that they do a light and sound show every night. 6:30 at night, you come in, they have a wireless headphone system, so you're listening to this in the language of your choice, whether it's English or French or German or Chinese or Italian, I think, or Spanish is the 5th one. But you walk in and everything is covered in white sailcloth. And as they talk about, say, the pillars of the church, they reveal the pillars and talk about where they came from France and who did the carvings. When they talk about the glass windows, those are revealed to you and the light shines through and you can see the artwork in the glass windows. They talk about the organ and there's a little organ concert and things like that. But this is all just, it's not focused so much on the faith of the area, but more the determination of the early settlers to build a church that was representative of what they viewed Montreal to become. And so, you know, that's kind of what it is. Again, the 2nd largest French-speaking city in the world, and in 1680, 1730, they were already thinking about that and the fact that this was going to be a very prominent area, a very prominent city, and they needed a church that was going to reflect that. So that's a great thing. You can come out to the Old Port area. You can do your walking tour in the afternoon, whether it's self-guided, and there are a number of brochures available that would show you that, or guided. You can do a tasting tour of the area. There are some companies that will take you out and do some tastings at the different restaurants that are in the area. Have a little 5 to 7 cocktail on Rue St. Paul or one of the restaurants there that overlook the harbor. Come over at 6:30, have your history lesson on Montreal, and then go to dinner at one of the restaurants nearby. And, you know, that's a nice fill-up of your day, all within about 6 blocks there. The next slide.
All right. Should be coming up here.
There we go. One of the things about Montreal is that our history is not all ancient. We have hosted the 1967 World Fair and the 1976 Olympics, and we have buildings left over from both of those. This would be in the Olympic area. The Tower of Montreal is sort of our landmark for Montreal, and then you see the round green and white covering right next to it. That is what's called the Biodome, and that was the velodrome for the Olympics. But what they've done is to turn it into an indoor sort of plant and gardens, the flora and fauna of the northern regions of Canada. And so you've got a penguin exhibit, and you've got many of the different botanical exhibits, the trees, the plants. There's some beavers, there's fish. It's all covered, so it doesn't matter if it's 80 degrees outside or if it's 20 below, and it doesn't matter if it's raining or sunny. It's the same experience the whole time. In this area, we also have one of the largest botanic gardens in the world. I think we're number 2 or 3 currently. There are 17 different gardens, themed gardens, from the Chinese, the Japanese, Indian, the First Nations gardens, as well as a number of greenhouses at the Botanic Garden. And our planetarium just relocated up there in 2013. So it's a fairly new building. But again, this is an area where you could spend the whole day just in this one corridor in the northeast region of Montreal and have a fantastic day. And the next slide. One of our newest attractions is the Greven Museum, and this is a wax museum, similar to Madame Tussauds, but a little bit different in the exhibits and the way that they handle these exhibits. Greven started in Paris, and Montreal is their second one. Then they're building another one in Brazil and another one in Poland. So you can have your different experiences that are themed to the destinations. Here we have one of the famous Quebec comics, and you'll see that he's also dressed in the Canadians' garb. And so you're combining that love of hockey and the hockey tradition that we have in Montreal with some of our cultural attractions. And the next slide. When we talk about the gardens, you'll see here the Chinese garden is there. It's a fantastic destination to go through and see during the day, and especially the summer with the flowers. If you go to the next slide then. We have every October these lanterns, and each year the theme is different, the lanterns are different. You have a nice presentation again in the evening to see these artworks lit up, and there'll be demonstrations then of Chinese calligraphy and some of the Chinese music and dancing and things like that that would draw people to the area, even though most of the flowers are on their way out. We have this great lantern exhibit that you can visit as well. And next. And when we talk about the expo buildings, this would be the Casino of Montreal. You'll see the French pavilion that kind of has the spaceship-looking structure to it, and the American pavilion is the square one next to it. Those are now the buildings that house our casino. And when you go to the casino in Montreal or any place in Quebec, you can rest assured that even if you lose money, it's for a good cause, because these are public-run casinos, and all of the money goes into the public works that way. The next slide. And you'll see it, it'll come up here. Same way that Quebec has its Winter Carnival, Montreal has its festivals as well, to bring in year-round attractions, things to do, getting people out. And so we have our Snow Village that's put up every year. These are some of the horse-drawn carriages. You can just keep going. It's fine. It's fine. The horse-drawn carriages here that'll take you on the city tour. You'll find those in both Montreal and Quebec City. Very unique way to get around. Our markets are there, the outdoor markets. People go and buy things for their home, but you'll also see the chefs from the restaurants coming out and buying their produce. And these are all coming from the different regions of Quebec usually. The next province, the next slide.
Okay.
When we talked about those places of interest, Charlevoix was the third one on the list, and this is the Hotel Tadoussac in Charlevoix, one of the Grand Dame hotels. We also have a number of smaller hotels and another Fairmont hotel that looks very much like the Chateau Frontenac, just without the tower. So there's lots of accommodations out in the area. Again, outdoor attractions, hiking, biking, canoeing, but also the galleries, classic music festivals in the summer, different types of dance performances, lots of reasons to go out there no matter what the season. And the next slide is our summer whale watching, and it surprises people sometimes, but there are 13 different species of whales that come into the St. Lawrence River. And so here I think you'll see, I think this one is a humpback whale. We have the fin whales, the right whales. Our whale season runs, the boats are in the water from May through mid-October for the most part. Now, there is a pod of about 1,100 beluga whales that are there year-round, and you can see them from the road if you're driving in the area. And our fin whales, we've got about 1,000 fin whales that come down and stay a little bit longer than that. But most of the boats go out when you'll see some of these larger whales, the right whales and pilot whales. And so you get a chance to see those from May through mid-October, depending on the season. Next. The hands-on arts and crafts that we have a number of museums that belong to the Econo Museums, and this is the paper making that we have, hands-on demonstrations. You can make your own candles, you can mill your own wheat. There's places where they talk about So the traditional folklore, and they do wood carving. So there's a lot of different opportunities to see the artists at work and to try your own hand at some of these artworks. The next slide.
You want to go back? All right.
Is our First Nations. We also have 11 tribes that are housed in Quebec that still have their traditional homes and their villages in Quebec. That was the modern museum and hotel. It's a four-star restaurant. The museum is 3-star just because of the services that are available there. And then we also have traditional places like the Long Hut here, where you can also, for a student group in particular, have them spend the night at the Long Hut. But you can go out for the day and just experience the traditional crafts. You can do different things. If you were there with a religious group and wanted to talk about the conversion of the First Nations and the Indians in the area, there are tours that will do that. So lots of different things with our First Nations, not only just outside of Quebec City here with the Hurons, but in Lac Saint Jean, just outside of Montreal. Very, very accessible areas. It's something that's not that difficult to get to with your groups. And next. When we talk 4 seasons, we have all of our winter sports. The ski-doo, the snowmobile was invented in Quebec, and there's a museum to that. We also have our skiing and snowboarding, and then finally just a goodbye from our First Nations people. This is a Nukshuk, which basically means we were here, we'd like to see you come as well. So that's the end of my presentation, and I think Todd's going to bring it back on.
Yep. All right. All right. So Deborah, thanks so much for sharing all that information on Quebec. You can see there's so much to do and so much to see. It's really an amazing area of Canada, and what we really like about it here at Vacations by Rail as well is that it's so accessible by train, and many of the cities, some of the hotels, like in Montreal, for example, the Fairmont Queen Elizabeth is right above the train station, because a lot of those hotels, like the Fairmont, the Frontenac, or the Queen Elizabeth, or if you're staying on the East Coast and you're going all the way down to the Eastern Canada and you're going all the way down to Toronto, that it's easy to make these connections. You're right near the train stations, and then you're going right to city centers and just some wonderful areas. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to spend just a brief amount of time. All this information is available on our website, but just kind of showcasing some of the train vacations that we have at Vacations by Rail that are already put together for people. There's some of the most popular ways to see Quebec and connect these great cities and destinations by train. So first one we're looking at here is just Montreal and Quebec. Deborah had talked a lot about Montreal and Quebec, and so I just want to show you just how easy it is, really. When you're talking about a 3-hour, 15-minute train ride between Montreal and Quebec, it's just such an easy trip. And these packages that we have here, the Montreal and Quebec, it's a 6-night package. It includes 3 nights in Montreal, 3 nights in Quebec, sightseeing in each city, and then just this quick train ride between the 2 cities, a little over 3 hours. And again, if you're going in the moderate packages, you'd be in economy class on the train, but you might want to consider for this 3 hours to bump yourself up to business class, have access to the lounges if they're available in the cities at the train station, but also include the onboard meal and wine when you're on the train. It really does enhance the experience. And then, and again, sightseeing in all the cities. We also have a couple of other trips like the Quebec City and Charlevoix, and this is really an interesting trip because you have a nice train, the Rissu-Charlevoix, which is a scenic train ride between Quebec City and Le Malbaie, and again, 5 nights in Quebec City, and then onto Le Malbaie region, and you can stay again at a Fairmont Hotel, the Le Manor, Richelieu, thank you. And again, it's a 7-night package that is so easy to do by train. This is just a short train ride, and you get to enjoy the scenery, and it includes a full day of whale watching, sightseeing tour and cruise in Quebec City, a Quebec City walking tour, the round-trip transportation on the train, and some of the highlights, again, the St. Lawrence River, Quebec City. It's just an easy package and super popular with a lot of Vacations by Rail customers. And here's another one that includes the overnight train that I mentioned earlier. This is the Quebec to the Maritimes trip, where you start in Montreal, spend a night in Montreal. You may want to consider adding a night or two in each of these cities, the Montreal and Quebec, so that you can experience these wonderful historic cities, and then connect to the overnight train on Via Rail's Ocean City all the way to Halifax. And again, that's combining these day trains with this overnight train experience, which are unique, are truly unique rail experiences, particularly when you get into the overnight trains. And if you've never done an overnight train, it's something I encourage people to do, because it really brings back, you really get that sense of journey, I think, on these longer overnight trains that you don't get in other modes of transportation. The Quebec to the Maritimes is a 9-day tour, as it is now. And let's see, it's a five-night trip. And then we have also a Maple Explorer package, which is the 9-day trip that starts in Toronto. And you can, again, see how this this whole area here is so easily accessible by train. From going to Montreal, do a day trip out to Niagara Falls, then board the train up to Ottawa, and then right there you're right on that region that overlaps in Quebec, and then on to Montreal, and then up to Quebec. So, and you're not talking great distances here. Toronto all the way to Montreal, if you just take this train straight through, is going to take you 4 hours and 30 minutes. Again, Montreal to Quebec City is 3 hours and 15 minutes. And then, they're just nice trains. Get up in the morning, check out of your hotel, and take these trips, and then be in the city center in no time. So again, another way to combine Eastern Canada and all these wonderful sites that Deborah has talked about. Couple more that we'll just touch on briefly, and then I want to just mention a couple of other things, and we'll take a few questions, and then we'll conclude the presentation. This tour here is a very interesting tour that we have. It's a tour we started offering this year, very popular, already selling out. It's the Fall Colors of New England, Quebec, and Montreal. This is an escorted tour, so you can see that includes flying into Boston, and then from Boston joining your group in Boston, and then doing the Fall Colors area, some scenic in the east coast of the United States, doing a couple of scenic railroads, Mount Washington Cog Railway, Conway Scenic, and then going up into Quebec City and spending a couple of nights in Quebec City during the fall time, and then into Montreal, and then coming back down and sightseeing the Fall Colors into Boston. So this is a great way, if you're going to thinking of doing an escorted tour this year that includes the Fall Colors, this is a great way to include some of the to Quebec and Montreal. It really is some of the best sites that you're going to see in this part of Canada and the United States, particularly during the fall time. And again, escorted tour includes meals, sightseeing, hotels, a tour manager that's with you the entire time, luggage handling. So it's an 11-day escorted tour, and you can get more information and a detailed itinerary on that when you go to vacationsbyrail.com. Just search for the Fall Colors of New England, Quebec, and Montreal. Rail and cruise combinations is another popular way to see this area. And we have an Eastern Canada rail and cruise package that includes, it's a 15-day tour. It includes a cruise out of Boston, up all the way, as you can see, as it travels Bar Harbor, up through Halifax, Sydney, Prince Edward Island, and then all the way down into the St. Lawrence, into Quebec City, and then on to Montreal. And that's all part of the cruise portion of it, seeing some of the amazing highlights of the eastern seaboard, east coast, and into eastern Canada. And then as an add-on to that, you can then just continue your stay to go a couple nights in Montreal, into Ottawa, and then Toronto. And again, another unique way to combine rail and cruising to experience this area of North America. So, people who really enjoy cruising, this might be a great option. The other thing, the last couple of things we want to talk about is just how you might be able to customize some of the packages that we've already talked about. Some of them, like the Quebec and Montreal, or the Maple Explorer package, these are easy itineraries to add on stays or customize any way you want, whether or not you want to go to Prince Edward Island or you want to do Eastern Canada and then continue on the Trans-Canada, the storied Via Rail's Canadian service, which is 4 nights on the train between Toronto all the way to the Canadian Rockies and into Vancouver. Those are easy things to customize, easy to add on to make it just an amazing experience in Canada. Now we're going to conclude here, and then we'll take a couple of quick questions here, and then we'll conclude. If anybody has any questions, you can just pop us a chat, and we can answer those questions. Go ahead. And if not, then we'll conclude. But we'll wait just a minute or two here to see if anybody has any questions. All right, let's see what we have here. Do I need to know French in order to travel throughout Quebec? And that answer would be no. You do not need to know French. Deborah, maybe you can talk a little bit briefly about the French influence in this area and how that may impact somebody's stay.
Definitely. French is the first language that's there, but it's still in North America, and especially now with the internet and satellite TV and everything else, you'll find about 600,000 people in Montreal that consider English their best language. Everybody that works in the tourism industry, in your restaurants, in the tourist areas, in your hotels, in the train stations, all speak English very well. And most of the others, they've all studied it, so they speak it somewhat, if it's not fluent. But any place where they get practice, it's fluent English. It's not a problem.
And I have to say, I mean, having that French influence truly makes it such an international feeling destination. You know, going to Canada, obviously, out of the United States, international destination, but it really has this great cultural experience when you go to that part of Canada, which makes it so wonderful. If there are any other questions, let's see. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. A couple of things I just want to touch on quickly here is, again, thank you for joining us, Deborah. Thanks for spending the time and helping us with the destination information. I know that's really what drives people to take these extraordinary trips. And the other thing I want to mention is that not only for attending the webinar, if you mention the webinar and the promo code that we're showing on the screen right now, QC Webinar 15, you'll receive $25 off per person off your next Vacations by Rail train vacation. But the other thing that is really going on, I think that is a tremendous savings for people who are considering a trip to Canada this year, is the strength of the U.S. dollar. We've been offering a special promotion that we've been going on a kind of a month-to-month basis here. It allows people to save up to $800 per couple. It's basically a currency savings, because right now what's happening is it's almost a greater than 20% savings compared to how it was just 10 months ago when looking at the Canadian dollar and the U.S. dollar. So currently 1 US dollar is getting you about $1.25 Canadian. So any savings that we're getting right now, vacations by rail, we're able to pass along some of those savings to you to make it more of an affordable time. And then when you get to Canada, it's an even more affordable experience as the dollar strengthens. So it's a great time to go to Canada. This particular promotion right now for the currency, the currency savings, we have it slated to end at the end of March. We have been extending them as we look at what the current market conditions are as it relates to the currency. So if you're interested in taking a trip to Canada, now is really a great time to do it. So again, I want to thank everybody. Thanks, Deborah, for joining us today and spending time. And this webinar has been recorded and will be available online to view if you want to go back and get some additional information. But visit us at vacationsbyrail.com. Call our rail specialists at 877-929-7245. Ask them about Eastern Canada. It truly is an amazing area of Canada that people should spend some real time exploring these cities, their historic cities, and it will create memorable holiday experiences. Thanks so much.
Thank you.